Hey guys, hope you're having a great day today so far. In this video I'm going to run through my current quad work, which forms part of my overall leg training. Now I'm going to go into quite some detail indeed as to what I'm doing and why, so if you're someone that's struggling with quad growth in particular, then maybe this video is for you. It's aimed at intermediate to advanced lifters in particular, though beginners can perhaps learn something. It's better to develop good habits now that you can put into practice as you become more muscular and stronger. So before we start, if I could ask you to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. Also check out my description box below for links to my free newsletter, the best Excel spreadsheets in my opinion for regular training, and also the famous 5x5 strength-based mad cow routine. Also my affordable online coaching, which again is specifically designed for natural lifters. So without further ado, let's get into it. A little bit of background perhaps before we start in terms of the actual techniques I'm using here. Now historically I've always squatted, and it'd be something that I would advocate, especially for the first few years of lifting. You can get a lot of muscle from squatting and squatting well and just basically progressively overloading that lift, high bar squatting with as good a technique as you can. But for me, squatting doesn't come easy. It's not something that naturally feels good. It was always something I had to put a lot of work into, do a lot of mobility work and flexibility work, and I felt that I was in time just bottlenecked by my rigidity and stiffness, and I felt that I'd plateaued for quite some time in terms of leg growth, so I decided to change things up. And I have to say it's been a relief moving away from squatting. It became very tiresome, very psychologically demanding as well as physically. Obviously it's a very debilitating lift. To kind of pump myself up and try to add more weight to the bar each and every week. And it just got a little bit too much. So that's why I've kind of moved away. As you can see here, I'm obviously working on quad extensions, and this is my first exercise. I do a number of warm-ups essentially to get a reasonable pump before my actual working set here. I only do one working set. And the way this machine is set up is that it allows me to get the most range of motion possible, a little bit more than what you would on some of the other machines, which is always good. And I continue the set on past the point of failure basically with partials, trying to keep the same tempo throughout. So there's nothing much really to say there. Now moving on to the leg press, this is the heavy compound. So I use pre-exhaustion now to basically make the leg press harder. The leg press is the main movement of the day. So I'm going into this with a solid leg pump, a lot of fatigue already in the quads in particular. Again, I do maybe 2 or 3 warm-ups. Quite low reps though on the warm-ups with this movement, as my legs are already very warm already. Then I work up to my heavy set, so I think only 170k on the apparatus on this particular machine, which is quite light, but I'm making it harder by doing the following. I'm increasing my range of motion. I can't go any lower. I try not to push my knees out too wide. Basically, as you come down, if you flare your knees out, you're going to go wider because you're moving your thighs outside of your chest. But I feel for me that just puts a little bit more strain on the adductors, the groin area, the glutes. So I try not to flare out too much, and I go as low as I can whilst trying to keep more or less tight. And I allow a little bit of a flare out, but I don't want to go excessively wide because I think that takes some of the tension away from the quads. For me personally, that's what I feel. So that increases the difficulty. The pause at the bottom increases the difficulty, and I don't lock out, which again increases the difficulty. So there's 3 factors there that make that set harder and make it more quad dominant for me. I then, just to the point where I feel like I can't get another rep out, I feel like I'm going to fail that next rep, I then pause at the top and hold. I gather my kind of energy and reserves for another push, 5 to 10 seconds, and then I go again. And this particular set I managed 2, pause, and then 1. And looking back at the set again, you're thinking to yourself, well, I probably could have done another rep there. It always feels worse than it looks. Always remember that. So it does pay to film yourself on these sets, especially when we're only doing one set, guys. The intensity has to be very, very high to cut that volume right down. You can't have it both ways. You can't train with low volume and low intensity. It's not going to work. So now moving on to the last exercise here. This is the final quad dominant movement that I do, and it's the hack squat but Sissy style. So Sissy style for me is just tiptoes. So I take my heel off of the platform, and that places a lot of stress on the quad in particular. There's no stress on the glutes. There's no stress on the hamstrings, on the hips. It's just quad, and it's lower quad. Very specific to lower quad for me. It's a great movement. It's not as debilitating as, say, heavy leg press. So I can do these fairly quickly, and it doesn't come at a huge cost in terms of overall energy expenditure for me. So it's a good one to go into after the leg press. We'll actually do hamstring curls after the leg press, then into the hack squat. So you can see that I'm allowing my knees to drive right out in front of me, way over the top of that platform. And if you're worried about that, I can reassure you that it's not bad for the knees. That movement, that mobility in the knees is good. Now, I wouldn't advocate loading it right up, but certainly with reasonable weights, I find that it can actually be beneficial for your knee health. And it's certainly beneficial for my quads. The pump that I get from these is just insane. So what I'm doing again is going to failure, or just because this movement doesn't come at a huge cost in terms of energy expenditure, you're easily able to again push to failure. Here I actually foul the rep. You either want to get there or just shy of it, so feeling like you're going to foul that next rep with certainty. I then lower the weight. I mean, I'm only doing 6.25 on the hack anyway. I lower it to the apparatus only and do another set, more or less to the point where I feel like I'm going to foul that next rep. And it is deceiving. So I would recommend, filming yourself if you're interested in HIIT work, really trying to maximise that intensity, because it feels like you're going to foul, but then looking back at the video, you think, oh, maybe there was another rep in there. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, guys. If you did, then please consider subscribing to the channel. Also check out the description box for all my links below. Thanks for watching and stay strong.